Assalamualaikum students, our today's discussion will be about this essay from March 2023 exam paper. It's variant 4.2. There is only one variant in March exam series. The question is from micro section. It is question 3. Some firms in oligopoly markets choose to collude rather than engage in price competition. This will lead to higher prices and a less efficient allocation of resources. Evaluate this statement. So collusion is when firms join hands together and they form a monopoly. Will that lead to higher price and less efficient allocation of resources? That is the question we need to, and we are required to evaluate this statement. So first of all, what is oligopoly? Oligopoly means few firms, fewness. When there are few large size firms. Now these few large size firms that makes an oligopoly. Unlike perfectly comparative and monopolistically comparative markets, where there is a large number of small size firms, in oligopoly there are few large size firms. Most of the practical examples which we come across in real world is from oligopoly. For example, Pakistan's automobile industry, dominated by Suzuki, Honda and Toyota, oligopoly. Pakistan's cell phone industry, dominated by again few firms, Mobilink, Waris, Telenor, and that's a couple of brands. And if we look at soaps, we will see few soaps dominate the market, few brands. If we look at newspapers, there are few famous newspapers and they dominate the market. If we look at TV channels, we look at few TV channels which are dominating the market. The airlines, there are 3 or 4 airlines which probably have almost 100% of the domestic share of the airline market. Now, most of the firms, most of the examples in the real life are from oligopoly. Entry into this market is difficult. And another very important feature of oligopoly is high concentration ratio. High concentration ratio, we may actually give it another name as well, and that is market share. Few large firms have high concentration ratio, meaning a high percentage of the total output of the market is concentrated in the hands of few large firms. For example, if you look at Pakistan's domestic airline industry, so Air Blue and Serene and PIA probably have more than 90% of the market share, and that is an example of high concentration ratio. The firms dominate and their actions and strategies have an impact on others, so we call it strategic interdependence. The strategy of one oligopoly firm have an impact on other firms. Unlike perfect competition or monopolistic competition, where an individual firm is so small that their actions cannot have an impact on other firms, in oligopoly, firms are large enough and their actions can have an impact on others. For example, if one of these 3 big car manufacturers, Honda, Toyota or Suzuki, introduces a hybrid model or an electric vehicle in the market, they will have an impact on others and vice versa. So that's what we call that firms in oligopoly market are strategically interdependent. Sorry, I should have written strategically interdependence. Strategic interdependence. Now, one of the ways in which firms can compete in oligopoly is competing on price. Now, there is a theory which is known as King's demand theory. So, we mentioned that in the second paragraph, and this theory assumes that competitors behave differently when a firm decides to raise price or when they decide to lower it. So, in case a firm raises the price, its competitors will not follow the increase in price. They will not match it. Now, that's the assumption. And when a firm raises the price, others do not follow it. The firm which has raised the price will be facing a proportionately larger fall in quantity demanded, and there will be a larger reduction in quantity. So I'm going to show this diagram. I'm going to draw it at least twice to tell you how to make this diagram, how to draw this diagram accurately. So let's assume initial price was P1 and initial quantity was Q0. The firm was operating here and the firm decides to raise the price. When they raise the price, other firms do not follow it, and the firm which has raised the price will see a flatter looking demand curve, which is the blue line. On the other hand, if the firm decides to lower the price, it is assumed that other firm will also follow it. So firm lowering price will not really benefit, because when they lower the price, others have also lowered it, and they will not have any advantage over their competitors. In that case, there may be an increase in the demand because they lower the price, but that increase in demand will be proportionately very less, since other firms have lowered the price as well, and the demand curve would look like a steeper one. So let me erase this and use another ink. So the green one shows when the firm lowers the price. Now that demand curve is known as a kinked demand curve. It is a kinked demand curve as it is not a straight line. So there are a couple of criticisms on this theory. One, how did we determine this initial price of P1 and Q0? The theory is silent about this. And the second, that how can we assume the reactions of competitors? Competitors can react in any way, and it's not essential that whenever a firm raises the price, others do not follow it, and whenever a firm lowers the price, others follow it. Assuming this, that competitors will always act in this manner, is quite unrealistic. So these are the two criticisms. There is a third criticism as well. We'll talk about that in a moment. So I now erase this diagram, and to make this diagram complete, now let me tell you that which common mistakes candidates make in drawing this diagram. Now we need to make an MR curve as well. Now MR curve, there are two demand curves now. One is for that region where the firm is raising the price, and that is blue line. So blue line, so there is an MR curve that corresponds to this one. So till that quantity where the blue demand curve is drawn, we have drawn an MR curve as well. And now we draw an MR curve for the green shaded. But if we draw the green shaded beyond quantity Q0, if we draw an MR curve, now this diagram now is not correct, because this distance is not equal to this one. Remember, MR bisects the length between demand curve, the vertical intercept, the x-intercept of demand curve, and origin. So this distance must be equal to this one. So MR bisects. Bisect means dividing something into two equal parts. So MR should divide the area between origin and x-intercept of demand curve into two equal parts. Now in this case, if we look at this, the right area is smaller, and the left area to this green line MR curve, the vertical intercept of this is larger. So this diagram is not correct. To ensure that we draw a correct diagram, let me erase these diagrams and draw a new one, so that in the exam paper you can draw a clear diagram. So first I should show quantity and price, and then I show a blue line that is for increased price. Now, and for now I've made the MR curve, the green MR curve, before I drew the demand curve, so that I can say, now this is, for example, 100, from 0 to 100. So I will now say 200. So a steeper looking curve, something like that. Now, and blue line could be, let me draw it again. So price along x-axis, quantity along y-axis, initial price, take it as high as possible, and then first of all draw a horizontal line, a vertical line like this. Now draw MR curve, the green line, and then take the double area. Now this area Now, almost, if we look at this, if we assume that it is 100, let's take it to 200 and join these 2 points together. So this is the portion of demand curve and MR which is for the falling price. For the rising price, blue area, make it a flat curve and draw an MR curve up to the quantity. Now this is a slightly better curve. I draw this one again. So a steeper curve, that is blue area, it's a green diagram with a steeper one, and a blue one is the flatter one. It is for the increase in price. Initial price was P naught and initial quantity was Q naught. If the firm raises the price, others do not follow, and the firm raising the price faces a flatter demand curve. And if firm lowers the price, others follow it, and that results in a steeper demand curve. Now, if MC curve is between MC1 and MC2, even though marginal cost curve shifts from MC1 to MC2 but stays within this range, profit maximizing price will remain P naught. That's why there is a strong case of keeping prices fixed. Do not compete on price. Why? Because if you compete on price, your profits would fall. Secondly, when you raise the price, when the firm raises the price, others do not follow it. Elastic demand is more than one, total revenues of the firm falls. If the firm lowers the price, other firms follow it, elastic demand becomes steeper, and lower price would mean total revenue falls again. So if a firm in oligopoly raises price, their revenues would fall. If they lower price, their revenues fall. So what should they do? Keep the price rigid, keep the price fixed. So the third criticism on this King demand theory, I said I will talk about that in a moment, and that is what will happen to price and output if marginal cost curves goes out of the range of MC1 and MC2. So three criticisms on King demand theory. Number one, how did we determine the initial price and quantity? The second criticism, that how can we accurately predict the reactions of competitors? And thirdly, what will happen to price and quantity if marginal cost curves goes out of the range of MC1 and MC2? To avoid the situation of a price war, the firm can choose to compete on factors other than price. And these factors are four elements of the marketing mix. The students who do study business at A level are aware of these 4 P's of marketing: price, product, place, and promotion. So instead of competing on price, the firms can compete on the quality of product, they can compete on distribution, that is place, or they can advertise and promote their products more heavily. So firms can compete on quality, branding, packaging, variety of their goods. They can compete on distribution methods, and it is generally believed that decisions to compete on price do not give a firm a permanent edge over other firms, because the decision to change price can easily be matched by the competitors. In case you want to have a permanent edge over your competitor, competing on quality is a better idea. So compete on quality, compete on brand loyalty, brand recognition. That will be a better idea, and that may give you a more permanent edge over your competitors. So one more argument in favor of not competing over price. So the word we have already used, the strategic interdependence. So firms are vulnerable. They are uncertain because they know that actions of other firms can have an impact. In Lahore, there are 2 famous departmental stores, Jalsan and Al-Fatah, and maybe a third one, Imtiaz store as well. So actions of Imtiaz store can have an impact on Al-Fatah. Al-Fatah's actions can have an impact on other mega supermarkets. So there is an uncertainty. There is an element of uncertainty because you can never predict the actions and reactions of your competitors. So to avoid this uncertainty, the firm may choose to collude. Now collusion is of 2 types. Collusion could be formal or collusion could be informal. Collusion could be formal or collusion could be informal. Informal collusion is known as tacit collusion, that there is no verbal agreement between firms, but firms uh, informally follow each other, and they do not explicitly exchange information and coordinate with each other, but they agree to a form of comparative behavior which benefits all the firms involved. Let's take the example. We often see that these car manufacturers in Pakistan, when they change the price, they all change the price maybe within a gap of few days. If one lowers the price, others follow. If one raises the price, others follow as well. Now, if you go to an ATM machine and you have a bank account in any bank, probably the same charges will be deducted. Now, who decided these same charges, and who decided that these car manufacturers will change the price collectively? Maybe there is a formal agreement, maybe there is an informal agreement that they have decided that they will not compete on price. If one bank charges, let's say, 20 rupees per transaction for ATM withdrawal, cash withdrawal, and other firm says, or other bank says, let me charge only 10, this may initiate a price war and every bank will lose. But in an informal agreement, in tacit collusion, what they can do, that they can agree to a comparative behavior which benefits all firms involved, and they say, we will not compete on price. We will not compete on price, and we will change the price only when others also agree to change the price. So that is tacit collusion. The collusion is formal. Formal collusion is when firms make agreements with each other and they explicitly exchange information to each other regarding their output and regarding their production. So when collusion is formed, it reduces competition and firms become larger, they gain a larger market share. So there are two types of diagram which can be made to show a collusion. One is a simple demand supply diagram. You may draw that and you may say that when collusion is formed, the firms restrict outputs. So let's say initial price was P naught and initial quantity was Q naught, and a collusion is formed and the output is restricted, the supply will be restricted, price would go down and quantity would go down, like OPEC does. And what does OPEC do? Oil and petroleum exporting countries, there's a cartel, it's a formal collusion. Now what do? They restrict output of oil to be able to raise prices. And that's a simple looking diagram, you may make that. Alternatively, you can make another diagram, and that is a little complicated, but I will prefer that diagram. Let's assume that before the collusion, there was a kind of competition, and demand curve and supply curve were determining the output, and they were determining the price, and I can see PC and QC. Now, why do I prefer this diagram? I'll come back to this in a moment. Now, supply curve, is also marginal cost. Now, when a collusion is formed, in a way, it is a monopoly is being created. When there is a monopoly, there is a divergence between demand curve and MR curve. So, MR curve lies below. So, this is MR curve. Now, where is the output now? Where MR is equal to MC, the quantity of monopoly would be less, or quantity of collusion would be less, and price would be high. So, it's a price of monopoly, or you can say price after collusion. So, look at this, that price after collusion has gone up and output after collusion has gone down. So, in a way, we have answered our question, and the question says this leads to higher prices. Yes, we have just concluded that collusion leads to higher prices, and both diagrams are there to support our argument. But there is another argument, less efficient output, less efficient. Now, diagram shown to the left side shows prices have gone up, but it does not show about efficient resource allocation. Diagram on right is a little more complicated, but it tells us that output is no longer efficient. Before the collusion, the price was PC, which was equal to the marginal cost of last unit, and output was allocatively efficient. After the collusion, price has gone up to PM. It is higher than marginal cost of the last unit. Output is no longer allocatively efficient. So we may say yes, after collusion, prices rise, and after collusion, output becomes less efficient. So This is explained in the first paragraph below diagrams. Before collusion, the firms were allocatively efficient as the price was equal to MC, but after collusion, price is more than MC, and that's why output is no longer efficient. But we will now look at the other side of the argument, and we may say maybe a collusion will raise efficiency, and which efficiency will be risen because of collusion. Collusion raises profits, and these high profits can be used for research and development, and that can lead to an improvement in dynamic efficiency. So on one hand we say collusion reduces efficiency. Collusion makes allocation less efficient because price becomes higher than marginal cost. But on the other hand, we say collusion leads to greater efficiency, as firms will have more profits. They will be spending those profits on research and development because they know that there are entry barriers, and they'll be able to benefit from this research and development. They'll spend more on R&D, research and development, and that will lead to dynamic efficiency, and that will shift long-run average cost downward in the long run. And that's the diagram I'm going to make. Quantity and average cost, long-run average cost curve, a U-shaped one, and due to dynamic efficiency and due to more investment in R&D, long-run average cost in the long run will shift to the right, downward. And that means that the collusion and exclusive oligopoly could be more efficient. Another benefit of collusion that they will be able to eliminate small firms out of the market share rises, their output rises, and they may start exploiting economies of scale. Now let's say, I'm not assuming, I'm saying collusion. I'm not saying that firms have become one firm. I'm not saying that. In collusion, firm may only be agreeing to a uniform policy and uniform competitive behavior, but they may still retain their independent identities. The size of the firm is not going up because of collusion, because firms are still independently operating. However, small firms will be eliminated, and size of the firm will indirectly go up, and that will help them exploit economies of scale. Economies of scale, exploitation of economies of scale will mean average cost will decrease, and this may lead to greater efficiency. So, benefits of collusion, what are they? The benefits of collusion, the firms will be of large size, they'll be able to exploit economies of scale, and large size not because that the firms have given up their independent identities and they have become one large firm. Large size of firm is achieved because smaller firms usually are discouraged after a collusion is formed, and they're forced to leave, and their market share is won by the remaining large size firms, and firms become large, they exploit economies of scale, and they invest more in R&D, they can give more variety, they can experiment more, they can launch new products without fearing losing to their revenues and their customers to their competitors, and they can improve the quality of product in the long run, and in long run average cost may go down. However, there are drawbacks. Allocated inefficiency, less output, high prices, exploitation of consumers. So in conclusion, we can say that a collusion may not be bad in itself. We can never say with firmity, with certainty that a collusion is always bad. What should a government do? That a stronger and robust government regulatory framework is required to ensure that collusion works for the betterment of the customers, and they do not over exploit customers, and government should keep an eye on the competitive behavior of the firms. Now this concludes my discussion on this question. Please do practice this king demand curve and do practice other diagrams as well. You can take the screenshots. I am showing this question slow by slow. You can take the screenshots and you can prepare this essay. It's a very useful essay and frequently asked question from this topic. Thank you very much.